can't wait to give the microphone over to Yvonne Tousek Renne. Many of you will know that name because she was in the 1996 and the 2000 Olympics. She's been in the World Championships, 95, 96, 97, 99. She, in 1999, was in the Pan Am Games and won first place on floor and bars and fourth in all around. She also has entertained many of us when she was a UCLA gymnast, 2001 to 2004, correct? While she was there, she scored a perfect 10 on bars. Yvonne Tousek Renne.
Hello, good afternoon, or evening, I suppose. Thank you very much, Evelyn, for the lovely introduction. I'm very, very pleased to be here with all of you today. I'm excited to speak a little bit about my Cirque du Soleil experience, the skills, the tools I acquired there, and then also bring that back around to my career as a gymnast and how I feel that would have enhanced my career as a gymnast as well, my performances in the elite and NC2A sport. So Evelyn gave quite a comprehensive overview of my background. As she mentioned, I was an elite athlete for quite some time, training in Canada, and all the way up until the World Championships and representing Canada at the Olympic Games. Sydney 2000 was my last international competition. I had previewed already to go to UCLA right after, so I spent 4 years working under Valerie Kondos Field and had a great NC2A experience. My sister was also an NC2A gymnast. She was a Florida Gator, so gymnastics runs in the family. And then when I finished my last NC2A championships, I just felt like I wasn't quite finished yet. I felt like I had a little bit of acrobatics left to do. I always had a little bit of a creative, more artistic side, and I really loved that part of artistic gymnastics and exploring that further. And I thought, what better avenue than to jump into performing and see what challenges that would bring and what kind of development that would bring. So Valerie Kondos at the time was doing some choreography for some shows in San Diego. She invited me to come perform at those shows for a few seasons, so that was my first taste of performing. I enjoyed it so much that I decided to delve a little bit deeper, and I auditioned for Cirque du Soleil in 2005. I had a great time at the audition. It was a lot of fun, a lot of stepping out of my comfort zone, trying the different artistic skills and the different exercises they had us do. Shortly after the audition, I was invited to the trainings that they do in Montreal at their headquarters, the training formations. So I took part in the 4-month formation there, and soon after got called to work on Corteo, which was a touring show. I spent 8 years on Corteo doing the Bouncing Beds Act, which you'll see in one of the videos coming up a little bit later. So I was portraying a young girl jumping on the trampoline beds with a group of other gymnasts. I also did a men's high bar number and some character work. After 8 years on Corteo, I switched to another show, Amaluna, and I spent 3 years on Amaluna performing with 9 other NC2A gymnasts in the Women's and Even Bar Act. So I did that there. I did some aerial work, some character work, and then it was a moment where I felt I wanted to step on the other side of the curtain. So in 2017, I began working at the headquarters in the casting department as an acrobatic casting advisor. So still doing that now, still loving doing that right now. And and last but not least, I have 2 young, very energetic gymnasts at home that keep me busy the rest of the time. So that's a little bit about me. So to give you maybe a little bit of a visual. a little trip down memory lane for me. So yes, again, I had a great experience as a gymnast and did the transition to becoming an artist at Cirque du Soleil, which is what I'm here to speak a little bit more about today. So we speaking about my experience at Cirque, the skills again that I acquired, and how these learnings and tools I feel could have enhanced my performance as an athlete. And I realize that some people may have not seen a Cirque du Soleil show yet, so to give my presentation a bit more context, I have included a short video clip of a few clips from the shows, so you can see what artistic gymnastics, gymnasts in particular, the types of roles they play on our shows, and to see what it is exactly we're trying to accomplish on stage. Lovely representation of the merging of the acro and the artistic, which we are involved in artistic gymnastics, so I think that's really important, that really harmonious marriage of the two to really give depth to the performance. And I'll be speaking a little bit about that throughout my presentation. So the number one thing we learn at Cirque du Soleil, first and foremost, we learn how to become an artist. So what does that mean exactly? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the training we receive, so you understand where the skills and the tools that we have, where they're coming from. It's quite an interesting process, and so I'll speak about what we learn, how we learn it, and why we learn it. So what do we learn? So we learn to give acrobatics and artistry the same level of importance in a performance. For an athlete coming to Cirque, whether it's an athlete or a circus performer, they do most of their training will either happen, one, in the theaters in Las Vegas, because we have the infrastructure for that, we have the stage for that, it's all set up, but the majority of the artists will be trained in our Montreal studios, which is our headquarters. And the training formations are pretty intensive and comprehensive. They last anywhere from as short as 3 weeks up to 4 months. Usually the average is more 3 months. And during this time, the acrobats will come in, they'll get a full formation in acrobatics and the new disciplines and the new skills they're learning to acquire. And they'll also get a full intensive formation on the artistic side for artistic development. And one of the things that I found really interesting is I did the formation in Montreal, and the first day that you step in the door in the headquarters, you're referred to as an artist. Everyone's referred to as an artist. You could be coming as a trained clown, actor, musician, from any type of sport, cheerleading, diving, synchronized swimming, gymnastics, but everyone is an artist. And I think it's really interesting because it serves a few different purposes. It sets up a deep focus of the importance of artistry in a performance and then the seamless fusion of the two. It inspires the artist mindset that you're really ready to dive into the process and immerse yourself in the training program. And it creates a sense of community and common purpose, because we are a family in every show, and the goal is to put a performance on stage and entertain an audience. So it kind of sets the stage, pardon the pun, for the training formation that's to come. So how do we learn the skills to become an artist? So we're obviously involved in the acrobatic trainings. The interesting thing about that is, coming from athletics, there's so many transferable skills on the acrobatic side, and also the soft skills. Comfort, traveling and adapting to new environments, using the skills you've learned through sport, and applying them to learning skills on a new discipline or new acrobatic vocabulary. So all of this is quite an organic transition for most athletes. I think the most challenging part is the artistic training, because it's really asking you to think outside the box, step out of your comfort zone, learn how to be vulnerable on stage. So this is really this is where it gets interesting. This is the interesting part of the training. So I'm gonna focus more on that side of things today. So the artistic workshops. So we have acrobatic coaches, we have specifically artistic coaches. And so the types of workshops that we're doing a deep dive into during these formations are movement, that's a really important one, so I'll discuss that one in a bit more detail. Dance, musicality, and rhythm, acting, improvisation, and clowning, facial expressions, this one was a big one for me, masks, voice, and percussion. So it's quite an extensive list, and all of this makes up the artist toolkit that really gives us the skills on stage to elevate our performance to the next level and really touch an audience. So movement. From the very first day, we spend a lot of time deconstructing movement patterns, and so that we can create new shapes and unique images. So you might be wondering why there's a picture of a stability ball here. We do not use it for strength, we do, but in other moments during the formation, but we're really using it to break down our movements and create less linear patterns and really deconstructing, putting focus on each little movement and learning how to move with the apparatus. So we could spend 20 minutes creating movement on the stability ball. And what's really interesting to watch is an artist moving on over the stability ball for 20 minutes the first day they arrive at the training formation, and then 3 months later. It's like water. It's the difference and the change in how they've learned to move their body, adapt their movements, break down make different forms and break down the way they move. It's really, really interesting. So it's just the artist opening their mind to think out of the box and how can I move differently? How can I have a message through my movement? What am I trying to say with the way I move? It's quite interesting. And then unlocking self-expression, I think that's a big one. Not all athletes will move the same way. Some athletes are elegant movers, some athletes are dynamic movers. So it's really finding what movement suits that artist, what's for athlete. We could transfer it back to sport as well. What's that movement that speaks to them, what's organic for them, and what do they want to lean into and put more layers on it and take it to the next level. Giving meaning and intention to each movement. This is also a big one. It's the difference, it's looking at the details, every small details, giving attention to every movement. So what's the difference between an arm position that's here and an arm position you're choosing to do there? So it's making choices with each head position. What does your head position say? What does your look say? What are your eyes saying in a specific moment? So it's really the choices about each particular way you choose to move. It's deciding how you're going to go up and down and change levels, spending time, how can I explore the different ways that I can change levels from standing to halfway to floor work, spending 20 minutes just on working on those levels. So those are really interesting ways that we work with movement patterns, and it's just taking the time to really delve into it and be open and flexible enough to explore those different types of movement patterns. Posture and positioning as well. It's really interesting because in shows there's a lot of moments where we're not the focus of attention. We have a few moments in the show where we're the focus of attention, but there's so many times that we're there for supporting images. So what is your posture? Is there always intention behind your posture? Is it passive? Is there life, energy in your posture? Or is it relaxed? Because as a performer, it should never be relaxed. So there's a lot of focus that's put on posture. What's your posture saying? So for us, for performing, there's a character element to it as well. So are you portraying a child? How does a child move versus a mature woman on the stage? How does she move? Are you a creature? How do they move? So it's really bringing intention and attention to all those little details. Another big one is using breath to lead movement. As an athlete, we tend to carry a lot of tension up here, and that can affect the way we move. So we learn very early on to try to move with our breath. So we breathe, and that gives way to the next movement. It also allows us to have more extension. If you're too tight and you're holding your breath, the movement isn't organic and natural, and it doesn't read as well. If you have more of a relaxed posture and you're moving with your breath, you can really focus on those moments where you can have extension, and you are a little bit more flexible in the way that you move. So that's a big one for us as well. and playing with changes and dynamism to create variation, interest, and impact. And this one it's interesting. I had an artistic coach once that said, it's like finding the variation, it's like as if you were eating a very sweet birthday cake, and it's delicious and it's wonderful, but at the end you realize that you really want something a little bit spicy to change the flavor and to entice your palate a little bit. So it's really finding those changes in rhythm and finding those changes in tempo and variation that will really bring interest to a performance. So when is that moment that you're going to stop and pause and look and still be able to keep people engaged and keep their interest? And also to be comfortable in the pause. One of the most uncomfortable things is standing on stage and doing nothing. It's very easy to go on stage and just keep moving, but it's very, very difficult to walk on stage, stand there, let people see who you are, and be vulnerable in that moment. So that's a big part of our artistic training as well. Can you be vulnerable on stage? And that leads to so many things. It opens you up to being open to all different kinds of artistic exercises and activities. Dance, musicality, and rhythm. So we have exposure to many different dance types, and again, every individual is different. Some lean a little bit more towards contemporary. Some artists, athletes are more towards hip hop or something with a bit more rhythm. Everybody has their unique style, the unique way they want to move. So it's to try all of them and find really what's the right fit and what they want to take a little bit further and work on and evolve and put more depth to. And learning to hear and feel the music in order to effectively portray and interpret it through movement. So again, it's this fusion of music, the music with the movement. Is it aesthetically working? Does it feel natural? Is it pleasing to watch? So it's all connected. Communication of choreographic intent, including mood, meaning, and themes. So different music has different energy, and that should be reflected in the movement. So it's really this harmonious merging, and it also comes all the way up to the facial expression. So the different themes, the different meaning, the different mood, it should all tie seamlessly together. And then exploring new and fresh movements that display personal style. So again, every artist, every athlete is going to have a different way that they enjoy moving, that they would like to express themselves. And it's really leaning into that and finding a way to develop that further on a grander scale. We also do acting, improvisation, and clowning. So this seems a little bit less connected to gymnastics maybe, but it's not. It is still quite connected because it's part of the entire artistic experience, and it's learning how to tell a story on stage, because that's what a performance should be. It should be learning how to tell a story, whether you step onto a stage or you step onto the floor or you're on the beam. You are expressing something. You're expressing something about yourself. You're expressing the music. It's a form of personal expression. So we do a lot of acting and improv and clowning so that we can learn how to express a range of emotions. We can establish a point of focus and eye contact, because just with the eyes, you can tell an entire story just with the eyes. It's a look, and there's a full range to that. It could be a mischievous look, it could be a playful look, it could be a serious look, but there's always an intention, and it's a very intentional point of focus and an intentional way of making contact with the audience, your teammates on the sidelines, the judges who are judging you. It's a form of connection, and it brings energy to the performance. It's a small thing, but it's not a small thing. It makes a big difference. And engaging with the audience and fellow performers, again, we touched on that a little bit. It's not so different from sport. We're engaging with the audience. Our goal is to entertain a public, but in gymnastics, it's really similar. There's fans in the audience. There are judges who are watching your performance. They want to enjoy it as well. And it's also a form of a personal expression, so it covers all three. And then to play on stage. We learn to play on stage. And again, it's just a form of artistic openness, learning how to be open to all types of personal expression. Facial expressions. Okay, this was opened my mind, the training on facial expressions, because as an elite gymnast, I was very serious. I think I had one expression. I maybe smiled at the end of the competition day, but that was probably the only time. In NC2A, I got a little bit better. Towards the end of my NC2A career, there was a smile that came about every once in a while, but I was always known as a very serious athlete. And it's interesting because I was working very hard as an athlete to be expressive on the artistry and the choreography, but little did I know, if it stops at a certain place, you're really limiting the full effect of how you can present yourself. So the facial expression, it's part of the full package, and it should be cohesive with the body movement. It should express what you're trying to express. It doesn't stop, and it's not just smiling or being serious. There's this whole range in between that can be played with and can be explored. So facial expressions for me was quite eye-opening, and another way to just elevate the performance and really take it to the next level and engage with people, because people want to see who you are. They want to see your face. What are you trying to tell them? So facial expressions, that was an important one, and I wish that's something that I would have developed further as a gymnast. I think it really would have enhanced my performance. Not only do your emotions need to match your movement to a certain extent, so if there's variations in your music and it goes from soft to dynamic and you change the way you move, very often your facial expression should tie in with that as well. But not only that, but for us as performers, when we step on stage, we don't have a competition every once in a while or even every weekend. We're almost daily on stage, so we're not always in the same mood when we step on stage. So it's really learning how to take your emotions of that day and turn it into your personal expression on stage and make it tie in with the way you move, and it's the full package. Masks, this one's a little bit less adaptable towards a little bit less of a crossover to gymnastics, but it's part of the comprehensive training, and we learn how to incorporate whatever theme or mask, type of mask you have into the body movement. So again, it's the full connection. Voice as well. You won't see us using our voice too much in sport. This is something we've learned to develop a lot in circus. Speaking, singing, yelling, laughing, crying, again, because it's all connected. So sometimes facial expressions may lead to using your voice, etc. Everything's all connected. And percussion. So percussion and body percussion, we use this in our shows. Again, we have professional drummers, we have professional musicians, but having a general sense of rhythm and percussion adds to the artistic training and the tools in our toolkit that we can pull on depending on which show we get placed on afterwards. And tying that into sport, obviously, a sense of rhythm is really important, and the variation of rhythm, because that will change the tempo of your performance. Particularly on balance beam, rhythm was a big one for me. So there's obviously rhythm on floor, but finding your rhythm on balance beam and finding those moments where you breathe, where you pause, that's impactful. Rhythm for me on beam was a really important one. So what does this all mean? All this crazy training that we do, what does this mean? So this means that ideally, at the end of the formation, we're able to create a character. To put this character on stage, and this character is going to tell a story. Now, we have fancy costumes, extravagant costumes, we have elaborate makeup, avant-garde theatrics. These are just the icing on the cake, the cherry on top. Really the base of what we're learning, when you strip all that away, the theatrics that make up the costume, it's so similar to gymnastics. It's really merging the full artistic with the acrobatic for it to be beautiful and make sense and be authentic. And it's really, the crossover is really, really similar when you take away all the extras. Okay, so I have a little clip of some of the trainings that we do in Montreal.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen. PPP veut dire Programme de préparation à la performance. Ce qu'on fait en général, c'est on prend des gens qui viennent du milieu sportif, acrobatique, et on les prépare pour devenir des artistes. À Acrobatiquement, on a un processus assez lent de prise de connaissance de l'appareil. Et parallèlement à ça, il y a des cours de jeu, des cours de danse, des cours de personnages, des cours de musique, tout ça pour avoir un bagage un peu plus général. Alors, il faut intégrer toutes ces disciplines-là acrobatiques, artistiques et l'ouverture d'esprit pour être capable de former vraiment des artistes qui vont être à l'aise sur la scène.
Ce qu'on s'est donné aussi comme philosophie avec le programme, c'est on ne veut pas uniquement développer des capacités physiques et artistiques, mais on veut vraiment que ce programme-là soit une expérience pour l'athlète qui devient artiste. Les gens, quand ils sont ensemble, bien, ils peuvent vraiment développer de l'affinité, ils peuvent avoir une meilleure connexion, puis ils peuvent apprendre de façon plus rapide aussi. C'est super important pour nous au niveau de l'expérience. Puis quand on parle à un athlète qui veut s'engager dans un programme préparatoire, on lui parle beaucoup de ça, de cette espèce de camaraderie qu'il y a à l'intérieur, de cette espèce de créativité dans les cours artistiques, mais aussi dans les cours acrobatiques.
Alors, à la fin de la PPP, les 4 ou 5 dernières semaines, les futurs artistes vont travailler avec un coach artistique pour créer une présentation. Ils vont faire une création collective. L'entraîneur artistique va être là pour les conseiller, pour les diriger dans les bonnes directions, mais pas pour leur dire quoi faire. Alors, ça va être aux athlètes de choisir la musique, choisir le costume, choisir le personnage, choisir l'atmosphère, choisir les éléments techniques. Et c'est une création collective, alors il va y avoir des décisions à prendre, mais c'est un processus de création. Et c'est le but de la PPP, c'est qu'il passe par le processus de création.
So what's really interesting is they're obviously touching on the importance of personal development and the artistic development of the artist and how that artist needs to find that within themselves. So they have the tools now, they've done the formation, they have the tools, they've done the trainings, they have everything they need, and now it's about them figuring out how they want to express themselves. It's their choice. They do a final presentation, there's a framework that it fits into. They decide the music they use, they decide how they express themselves, they decide on the movement. So it's really making it really personalized to them. So that's part of the artistic expression for each artist. So why do we need these skills? What is the next step? The ultimate goal, when I was performing on stage, was to tell a story through movement that's creative, expressive, and personal, with the goal of evoking emotion in an audience. Not so different from artistic gymnastics. It's an artistic sport. You can step onto the floor, ready to tell a story through our routine that merges beautifully acro and artistic, that is personal to the athlete because it's authentic, it's the way they want to express themselves, and with the goal of evoking emotion in the audience. And the audience, again, is a spectrum of different people that are part of that routine and that performance on that day. One of our directors of our recent show, Echo, Mukhtar, there was a little web series on him, and I love his explanation to the artists when they had a meeting on the first day of how they're going to tell the story based on he's thematic of the show and what he wants to say.
On est à l'entrée principale en fait du siège social pour accueillir les premiers artistes de notre production. C'est une grosse journée pour eux, surtout qu'il y en a qui ont voyagé encore fraîchement là, arrivés d'hier. Donc, ouais, c'est exigeant.
It's really like a circus playground in here. You know, a lot of work has been done before even our arrival, and so I'm excited to get started.
So our story focuses on our main protagonist, Future. She represents the youth of today. At the beginning of the show, we see the show through her eyes, and we see how she sees how the world is moving and changing and evolving at a fast rate. The way we're going to bring this story to life is, of course, high-level acrobatics, which is what you're going to bring to the show, but also strong visual artistic moments in the show, poetic moments, moments that is going to contrast and balance the acrobatics that we're doing in the show. And then thirdly, it's this giant symbol, which is the large cube that you see on the stage. It's something that's going to help us tell the story of the show as well.
So again, the artists are given the framework, the director has the vision for the show. Very similarly to gymnastics, where there's a framework. You have a routine, you have a minute and 30 seconds, you have certain elements you need to perform, but within that framework, there's play, there's exploration. You can go in any direction you want. So it's really putting the focus on being open to exploring the different avenues, different forms of personal expression, and letting the gymnast or letting the artist lead that and figure their way out. And that's how it's going to be a more authentic performance. It's going to have depth and it's going to have layers. So in both senses, there's a framework, but there's a lot of room to develop within that framework. A little clip right after this about Mukhtar explaining he really wants to see who the artist is on stage, as we want to see the athlete. We're impressed by their acrobatics. That's wonderful. They're doing really high-level skills, but who are you? Show me who you are. I think that's so beautiful, and I would have loved to implement that even further in my gymnastics too.
I want to know who you are. Like Campbell, I want to know who you are. Like Joe, like, you know, Taras, like, I really want to know what makes you guys tick. Usually the best shows are the ones where the performers feel like themselves on the stage. Yes, you act, yes, you become a character, but that shouldn't necessarily change your essence of who you are as an artist. So that's very, very important for me from the off-go.
Finally, so end goal, we touched on this briefly already, is evoking emotions in the audience. Having a performance that's with intention, authenticity, and creating depth and layers in the performance. So elevating the experience in the performance for the spectators, the fans, the judges, and the gymnasts themselves, because it's something that's really personal to them. So it's a win-win all around. So those were my 3 huge takeaways that if I were to go back and do it again, I would bring those tools with me. We're telling the story, stepping onto the floor, doing a beat routine that's telling a story that has the depth, a little bit more depth and the layers to it. Really focusing even heavier on the personal expression that's unique to me. And then finally, again, it's evoking emotions in an audience, and a lot of that comes from the facial expression. And I talked about how I thought that was very important in maintaining the eye contact and telling the story not just through the body, but through the face as well. That encompasses my experience and how it ties into sport as well. And I hope it was entertaining and informative. And yeah, thank you very much for having me today.